Wow. You guys, I'm on the stage at Mississippi Studios. That's fucking weird. I'm always there. You guys don't know how close I am to delivering a TED Talk right now. Like, just pulling an earpiece with a mic and telling you, like, how combating queer phobia can reverse the effects of El Nino or something like that. Like, actualize myself as a public intellectual or something. Okay, so many of you, if not most of you, if not every single one of you, given this audience, might know that Justin Bieber has a really nice penis. It's not just big, it's also really nice. Actually, I haven't seen it myself, but that's what Twitter says. What you may not know is that when these pictures of Justin Bieber's penis emerged, his father, who has a Twitter account, thank God, posted, quote, "What do you feed that thing? Hashtag proud dad." Which is so gay, right? And so I was going to use that lead to tell a story, and there's going to be a little twist. So I was going to tell a story about my penis and my dad, and having to be recircumcised when I was 16 years old. And the story was going to be about, I had a phimosis. You can watch a TED Talk about it online, I'm sure. And I had to have it fixed, and I realized something was weird with my penis. And I finally worked up the courage when I was 16 to tell my dad, and he laughed at me. And then we went to a urologist, and the urologist laughed. And the urologist said to my dad, "It's like a fish hook, ha 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 ha." And then I had surgery, and my wiener was like bandaged up in gauze and tape for a couple of weeks. A couple days after the surgery, I still went to a Tori Amos concert, totally hopped up on Percocet. About a week after the surgery, I still masturbated, even though I was told not to. But it's like you get a boner and you're like, I could just rub one out really fast. It won't. And a stitch popped and it was bleeding everywhere. I'm sorry, I should have trigger warning that. Sorry. And I was too embarrassed to tell anybody, so I'm gonna bleed out in the bathtub from my dick stitch. But it was fine, it healed, and everything was fine. And it was gonna be a story about bonding with my dad and realizing, like, thinking of him as this big queerphobic monster, and like he was actually pretty good about that particular incident. But then the events that took place in Orlando happened this weekend, and my sense of how I should use this time shifted a little bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and it'll still be like a funny story with the time I have left. But it hit close to home because I went to college in Orlando, and I lived there for about 6 years. And a lot of my queer formative years took place in the nightclubs there. So my first drag show was at Southern Nights. Is anyone from Orlando in here? Yeah, it's okay. It's a lot like Portland. My first drag show was at Southern Nights. My first underwear foam party was at Firestone. The first time I observed public sex was at Parliament House. Yeah, it's a really fun place. Orlando is an amazing town for queers. And when Pulse opened, I remember that it fit right into that constellation of clubs that we would bounce around to every night. And I remember Pulse's shtick, and I don't know if it still was, it's like, it was painted mostly white so that they can make the entire bar the color they wanted to by setting the lights different colors. That stands out in my memory. And so I wanted to tell a story about being a queer organizer, a queer student organizer in Orlando. And so I was president of, as many of you probably were, of the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual Student Union at the University of Central Florida. One of the highlights of my term was getting almost impeached by a little junta of gay white men who decided that I had made the organization too political. They lost that, and I was not impeached. And one of my responsibilities was to organize LGBT Awareness Month. And for that, we always picked a headliner. And so we'd look through these rosters of like B-list celebrities that we'd get from queer talent agencies and pick somebody. And I really wanted like a loud, talented, sort of confrontational like dyke, right? I felt that's what our campus needed at that time. It was the late 90s. And so we picked this person who I'm not going to name. At the time, her career was kind of shifting from stand-up and like jazz standards to like TV and film acting, right? So we caught her at this weird moment in her career. I'm not going to say her name, but I will say that she's on TV now on a very popular TV show. The show's name rhymes with Schmorange is the new whack. And which sounds like an IKEA furniture of some kind, which is good because it's about the IKEA version of prison politics. But so she was actually really, really lovely. Thank you. She was very lovely. She was super professional, but it seemed very clear from our correspondence with the talent agency and with her people that this gig was like not what she was looking for anymore, but she just had to fulfill this contractual obligation with this agent or something. So she was really pissed that she had to do this gig at a regional college in Central Florida. So when she arrived, she was totally friendly, but it was really obvious that she was like annoyed. She was annoyed. I don't want to speak ill of her. She was very professional. And so, she performed in front of an audience of about 30 or 40 people in a school auditorium with about 400 seats. And one of the stipulations in her contract was that we had to provide 2 musicians, an upright bassist and a drummer. So we just went to the music department and asked 2 students to be her bassist and her drummer. And she was so gracious, she'd do that thing that vocalists do where she's like, and Martin on the upright bass. And then Martin would just turn beat red and just keep playing the bass line like, da-doon-doon, da-doon-doon. And like totally missed his opportunity for an impromptu solo to like shine for the crowd. And then the drummer did the exact same thing. But after the show, we really wanted to like take her out and show her Queer Orlando, and like take her to the clubs that we go to all the time. And there were way too many of us, like 30 of us wanted to just like take her out to the club. So we did, all 30 of us. And we would basically go to spent like in the span of an hour, went to like 3 nightclubs. And she would just sit, and then we would just kind of sit around her in this weird, like we're like a flash mob, like posing like a magazine spread photo shoot. We'd just be like, just sitting near her, acting really casual. And we were all just like sort of starstruck and didn't know what to do with ourselves. And then at some point in the night, she just kind of slinked away and we never saw her again. That was it. She flew home. And so over the years, as I've been processing that experience, I've felt different ways about it. I have felt like really embarrassed, that like my sort of like very earnest political activists thought that she was the right fit for that kind of event at that time, and that there had been this miscommunication with the agent, and that it felt embarrassing. And then I started feeling angry, like, who is she to not take this opportunity to like warmly say goodbye to the people she once worked for in some ways, right? Like worked with, and as she moved on into Hollywood or whatever, she like missed this opportunity to like say farewell to the people. Or something like that. But I think that now my feeling about it is I kind of understand her perspective of it a little bit better. And I actually, not to sound cliche, but I'm actually really proud of that moment. It really showed how hard we were trying as a bunch of queers in Central Florida from all sorts of rural and urban parts of Florida and the South to carve out a space for ourselves in Central Florida at that time, to like make the world that we wanted to live in Orlando. While we were in school, a lot of us were out for the first time and organizing for the first time and doing this stuff for the first time. And I think that weird sort of mismatch actually made it visible, like what you can do if you just sort of band together. And we didn't do things like where we would co-sponsor with like Nike or do stuff with HRC. We just did this sort of bottom-up kind of like home building for ourselves in Orlando to make it a livable, sustainable, and fun place. And so I actually feel really proud about that story. So thank you for letting me tell that story.